Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our 5th season, we are looking at Joe Johnston's 2011 film Captain America, The First Avenger. I'm Andy Nelson from True Story FM Entertainment Podcast Network.
And I'm Matthew Fox.
Guest, Matthew, guest.
Get in your corner.
I'm Pete Wright.
Nobody puts Matthew in the corner.
We put Matthew in the corner.
We put him in our little cage thing that we have.
The drop-in cell.
The drop-in
cell.
Cool. No one's guarding it. I'll get out quickly. But anyway,
That's right.
Pete's the host. I'm not the host. I'm sorry. It was the research I did. You know, it put me back into that mindset. So.
Oh, you're right in it. Yeah.
Go ahead, Pete.
You are in it. Today we're talking about minute 64, which begins with Zola fleeing the control room and ends with Steve entering Zola's experiment room.
Dun, 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 dun.
Back on the show again, you've already heard, it's Matthew Fox. Hello, Matthew.
Hello. I will continue to not wait for my own introduction and just do my own. Kind of like Cap. You know, I'm trying to summon his energy of he doesn't wait for Zola or any of those to invite him in. He just bursts right in.
That's what it's called. Big Cap energy.
I'm surprised.
He has big Cap energy for sure. All right, so let's talk about what's going on here. So Schmidt is flipping all these switches. He has a ton of detonation switches, like far more than you would think you would need to do a self-destruct. Like he's going to lose. I mean, as we see, we get down to about 2 minutes and 40 seconds in the middle of this minute. That means in the past 40 seconds or so, he has lost 5.5 minutes somehow. I'm not exactly sure how this works, but it takes a long time to flip all these switches. My gosh.
I think I'm counting 8 switches. That's what I believe I'm counting right at the first second. It pulls back and we see 2 rows that look like 2 rows of 4 identical banks of switches. Is that what you're seeing? Because we were wondering if we would have the mythical 7 switches. I don't believe that's true.
So he has 8 switches all set for 7 minutes.
Yes.
Now, again, I have not had a super soldier serum. I didn't even play Call of Duty. I played much more like low-level tactical games. But in my very limited tactical analysis, I think if I was designing a self-destruct button and it required multiple buttons, I would have the timer start with the last button, not the first. Wild idea.
Well, they each have their own. That's what's so silly. Like, again, what if he just does one of them?
It better not.
I don't get this. Ellen Ripley only had one hers was very complicated to get into as well, but still.
With my last breath, I spit at thee, Andy. Even Khan had one very complicated set of switches and things to turn.
What was the self-destruct that they had to do to blow up the Enterprise? They had to each say something, right?
Well, there was that, yeah.
They've self-destructed the Enterprise so many times, and it's always a different way. But I also, if we're continuing this tangent for 1 second, I got to say, I'm so glad, Pete, you made clear you were referencing Khan. Because you started that quote, and in my head it went, oh, cool, I'll comment that that's from Khan. Wait a minute, what if he's quoting Shakespeare? Which Khan was quoting. And you're like, nope, he's a degenerate like me. He's taking Star Trek like Shakespeare. We're good.
Right. Please, sir. We're all gentlemen here.
So now Zola, I guess he's realized what time frame he has. He races out of the room. Like, I find his, like, the behavior of these two people very interesting. Schmidt is just so... Terminator, I'm going to flip all these switches, and then, I mean, he probably very slowly walks to wherever he needs to go. He's not even going to run. Whereas Zola, like, he darts out of this place fairly quickly, and he's scampering, I guess you'd almost say, across the catwalk as he's trying to get to where he's going. How does all this play for you, given that we have 7 minutes, and what are these two trying to do? Do you feel like you were, I don't know, or were you expecting anything? Were you expecting them to run out of the room together? Like, does it seem like Zola is just bailing on Schmidt at this point? Like, how does this play?
I think Zola's actions make sense because he's gathering up papers. He's trying to save what needs to be saved.
He is, but not yet. Like, right now, we just see him running. Like, I mean, we will see him going into his lab, like, toward the end of the minute. But at the beginning of the minute, like, from the audience perspective, Schmidt's flipping the buttons. Zola just runs out of the room.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it struck me funny when I saw it because it seems like like he's just saying, "Screw this, I'm out of here." I don't know. It plays funny to me when I look at it this way.
Okay. Yeah, I guess because of what comes right after it, I just thought, oh, he's running to like gather stuff up to get out of here.
Yeah, it may just be me looking at it that way, but it was funny to see him, like Schmidt starts flipping buttons and he's just like, "See ya, I'm out," and he just like runs out of the room. It's like the Six-Figure Man who suddenly just runs out of the room.
Yeah, right.
When finally confronted with
the
his
Count,
enemy.
Count Dugan.
Yes,
Nice.
yes.
Don't know how I pulled that out, but yeah.
There is a funny moment in this that, and I don't know, it's probably just me, but we see Zola running out across the catwalk, and then we cut to Cap, and now he's up on some catwalks, and we see him kind of come to this balcony, this edge of the catwalk overlooking the whole compound here, all like the factory floor. And we linger on the shot of him kind of staring out into it long enough where like he kind of raises his head and looks forward, and the camera very kind of gently moves to the left, almost like we're meant to see something before he and the camera then swing off to the right. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but it's about 15 seconds into this minute. It really made me think that he sees Zola or he sees something in this factory that we're meant to see. And I guess it confused me enough where I stopped and I looked at it long enough to scrutinize it. Like, am I supposed to be seeing something in the distance here with Cap? Did either of you notice anything in there that we're supposed to see, or did that confuse you, or is it just me, seeing shadows?
I didn't notice anything, but I did think maybe they wanted to give us just long enough with Cap examining the space, because I think this is our first full reveal of the factory floor, right? We've had kind of like looking down sections of the bomb casings and the fuel, but this is the never-ending warehouse of activity for the first time. And it struck me that maybe they just wanted us to be able to linger on it, because I didn't see anything that Cap should be looking at that we also should be recognizing.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Like it was structured strangely where I felt like, oh, he's seeing something here. And maybe it's just like, I want to be seeing something. Like maybe it's my brain seeing a huge empty factory and I want to see like Hydra troops all running through it on their way out or something. But just the fact that it's just the completely vacant factory floor, it ends up kind of being one of those things where it's deceiving my eyes, making me think, oh, I'm supposed to be seeing that person in the distance or something.
Well, it's interesting, too, because there are 3 sort of notable spotlights hanging down in the frame, and all of them like shine down to nothing on the floor. But it leads your eye to sense exactly that trick, right? It's pointing me to follow the beam of light and that where there is nothing. I don't know what that should be.
Yeah.
And I'll just say my uncharacteristic silence here is just because this is where, again, I'm deeply impressed by what you two are able to see in a film. Because maybe it's because I don't have the training, or just my inclination's always been more just the characters and the writing. And I'm sure all this affects that in ways I don't notice. But like, what I saw was a guy running around punching things. And like, it was not, I think the thing is you're noticing a lot more. And it's one of the things I loved about Thor is you all helped point out things that I didn't see, but I realized how much they affected it. And so, yeah, I can get, as you're saying this, yeah, that actually doesn't make sense. I wonder why that happened. But if you're asking my opinion on why there's the lights, I don't know. I'm lost.
So totally okay. Totally okay. It's an interesting moment that we have here. And yes, Pete, you're probably right. We're just meant to finally say, hey, now let's look at this whole factory floor for the first time from up here so we can really get a sense of what Hydra is doing. It does just feel constructed in a way where it feels like there's meant to be something else we're also supposed to be seeing.
Andy, my follow-up question to you is, in a few minutes ago, last week, we had the exterior shot of the massive scale of the outside of the factory, right?
Yeah.
Does the reveal of the inside of the factory live up to your expectation, exceed it, fall below it?
Well, I mean, that's an interesting question, because I guess when I saw the exterior of the factory, it looked like a building that was made up of, I don't know, 50 floors, maybe more, right. Incredibly wide, incredibly tall. But now I feel like, oh, it's like a big hollow shell, and the vast majority of it is just this giant interior of this factory.
Which begs the like assumption that whatever they're building in here is giant, right? It's going to be a very big thing. So,
well, and we do see as he runs by, like there's a giant. It looks like pieces of essentially what would be like a Valkyrie turbine hanging right there.
Yeah,
I think there's that. I think it's also it like this is not Schmidt. Schmidt hasn't had this plan for 20 years. He just got the Tesseract and now like, cool, what can I do with it? And also, he's not planning to have this factory be making weapons for 20 years. I think he is very focused on there's a 6-month maximum to this work because he's convinced he's going to make the weapons, he's going to use the weapons, he's going to take over. And so I think it does all kind of speak to the idea of this all being very thrown together at the last minute without much forethought because who cares?
Well, and clearly he's okay blowing it up. Like none of it, like to your point, it's all temporary. If I have to blow it up, I blow it up so I can go build another one somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah. Or 2 more, because it's Hydra. He blows one up, it makes 2 more factories.
Oh, that's such a good point. There are factories everywhere.
I just keep doing this. All right. So we get more of the fighting going on outside. Now the Tesseract energy does kind of confuse me from time to time and what it does to people, because we see a person disintegrated out here. When we saw it hit the building, as you pointed out earlier, Pete, or Matthew, one of you pointed it out, it blows the corner up. It doesn't disintegrate it. It literally is a giant explosion. But here we're back to the disintegration of people. And it's Dernier who's using it to do so. What's going on with these weapons?
I think one thing the MCU has established throughout the entirety of it is if you're a writer, Infinity Stone means you never have to say you're sorry. Like, the Infinity Stones always do exactly what the plot wants them to do without any correlation to what they could or couldn't do at later points in the movie or the TV show or the MCU itself.
It's in the title, man. It's an Infinity Stone. It can do everything.
Well, like I think Dewey, what I would focus on is like the human body is very different from a like solid building, so it's possible that it interacts with those 2 materials differently. I'm still on the like dial-up power level that, you know, you can switch the thing but then why does it blow up instead of disintegrate? I got nothing.
I was leaning on the different materials. Like it can disintegrate organic material and explode inorganic material. That's also magic.
I made a joke about writing, but we are told explicitly these things do not obey the scientific laws as we understand them. They make their own scientific laws. And I forget, which of the Power Stones is the Tesseract? Is this the Space Stone?
Space.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because that's why he gets teleported up.
Right.
Yeah, so like it does
so
its
when
own...
it blows up the building, it's making more space. You see what I did there?
Wow.
Or like, I would even just say like, you fire the laser one moment, it goes by the physics of Earth. Another time it goes by the physics of Titan. Like, what do you want?
Oh, that's a whole new way to look at it.
For all, I mean, we're just kind of going, there are way too many options that it could be a dial on the side. And like we already said, it could have been set on stun earlier. Now it's just one of these things where, it can be, maybe Dernier's finally figured out the switches and has moved it from blow up to disintegrate. I mean,
in just a minute, Dernier's going to set it to chickens. Wait till you see what happens then.
I can't wait for that minute. That's going to be a fun one when all of a sudden Dernier is turning everyone into chickens.
Oh, I wouldn't have. I was thinking like a Mel Brooks spoof on this. So like you use the laser to fry chicken,
Oh, I just imagined Dernier shooting a million chickens into the battlefield.
Wow, we all read that in such different ways. That was brilliant. Just like trying to read what's going on with this silly gun. So.
Awesome.
We do have a moment where they grab some grenades. Now we're just down to grenades that were in the side of the Hydra cycle, as one of the troops as I believe that it's Fallsworth, who's now, I guess he's out of the tank. I'm not, or maybe it's just another soldier. It's hard to tell what I can't tell if the soldier. I thought he was wearing the. What hat is he wearing? Maybe it's just a regular military hat. I thought it was his hat, and I thought it was him, but I believe that he's still in the tank. So it wouldn't make any sense at all to have him now leading some troops running past these Hydra cycles, telling them to grab grenades on their way. But maybe it is him. I don't know. Can any of you tell if that's him? It's right there at about second 22. It looks like Fallsworth in his hat. He's got the little
beret.
He's wearing a beret.
I was going to say, I think one of my other frustrations about the scene, I think we talked about this a little bit with Thor, is this is still in an era where the special effects are not really able to do the things that you might want them to do. So we're always shooting these battle scenes at night where it's hard to see things. And so I think a lot, for me at least, it's I just kind of glaze over the details because I really have to kind of like stare really closely to try and see this stuff.
Well, and it could be that, I mean, with all of the stuff that they had that they were filming, this might have been a scene that was intended to be earlier in the film or earlier in the fight sequence before he even gets to the tank. And they chose to use it here. And so maybe they darkened his face because it's really hard to tell if it is Fallsworth or not. And so it could have been him telling these people to grab these grenades from these cycles. They darkened, like they shadowed his face up so you couldn't really tell. And then you see all the grenade stuff going on because the next time we see him, he's back in the turret of the tank. So I don't know.
Which also made it jump back a bit. Again, like I think by now we've gotten so used to the special effects of the MCU being so good that we think they can do anything. This movie was made, 18 years ago?
No, not that far. It was only 10 years ago.
And, okay, even so,
11 years
big
ago,
jumps.
Yeah.
I would imagine that showing a human disintegrating versus showing a side of a building disintegrating, I can see the second one being a lot harder. So maybe that's why it exploded. I don't know why now I'm stuck on that question. So
that's very funny. All right. Well, we do see, I'm confused because it seems like Schmidt has been in the control room where they've been running everything, but now he's grabbing the Tesseract. And last time we saw the Tesseract, it was in, his kind of his office, the place that he had been, where they had been doing a lot of the experiments with it. But it seems like maybe over the few months where they've been doing all this building and stuff, they've created a new place for it up here in the control room where the Tesseract gets put into this machine and it pumps that Tesseract energy into all of the stuff they're building. That I would think that likely is the case as to what we're doing here. I mean, it's not completely clear, but that may be what's happening here.
Yeah, that was my read on it because I don't think we have Zola. Schmidt. I don't think we have enough of a logical blocking transition to take him to another space. It only makes sense if he's in that room. Not like Zola, who we saw run away and now is in the bowels of the thing in presumably his private office, which is definitely not as nice.
No, this is called Zola's experiment room.
Okay.
Where Zola is. And actually, I mean, we should clarify, like where we saw Schmidt earlier in the film, it's likely not even this location. Like when he was up in the mountains in the Alps, it's not necessarily here. Yeah. Because that was where they were first developing their stuff. Now this is the factory where they're actually building all this stuff. So yeah, it's likely a completely different location.
Right.
So, but yeah, you're right. We do follow Zola. So now we see he wasn't necessarily just bailing. He actually ran to his office, his experiment office. We see him gathering papers. Matthew, this is what you were talking about earlier. He's throwing everything into his little briefcase. I don't know. It's hard to tell what it is. He grabs it so quick. But it looks like, if you see what he's grabbing, it looks like it's a schematic of a person. I'm not exactly sure if, I don't know what his specific plans would have been. Like, was this the intention of what they're doing to Bucky? Is this in some way a hint at the Winter Soldier program? I don't know what it is because it looks more like a wetsuit or something on the schematic.
I do think that Red Skull has established pretty clearly that one of his goals is to eventually recreate the Erskine syndrome and be able to make more people to his power level. And so, yeah, I think those are the plans that, like, who cares? We can always find a new way to design a tank, but we need to know how to redesign that super soldier. But that's not really supported through a lot of the movie, so it's hard.
It really does look like a wetsuit, though. You're right, with some sort of mechanism on the front.
Yeah, right. I don't know what it is, but clearly he's doing something involving a body because he's grabbing the schematic and all of his stuff. He grabs his hat And the camera pans up to a map of Europe, showing a bunch of other Hydra bases. I thought this was interesting. Steve's going to certainly notice this too. From what I can tell, it looks like they have Hydra compounds here, where we are in the Alps in Austria, in Greece, Luxembourg, Prague, and then 2 spots in Western Poland, or at least modern Poland. That's about what it looks like, which, it's kind of interesting to see how Hydra is spread out around Europe as far as where they have their locations. I don't know if there's any particular rhyme or reason to where they picked, other than just saying, let's spread it around Europe, and some places maybe Nazi occupied, some places not, but we're going to kind of give this sense that Hydra, like, when you have a creature like Hydra with octopus tentacles in their image, it's kind of spreading itself out across the European continent.
And everyone wants to be stationed in Greece. Who are we kidding?
True. The women there are even better than the French women, but and the men too. But the one thing I got from it is that none of them, at least as far as I could tell, were in Germany itself. And so my sense was, and a lot of them were kind of on the edges, like the Benelux, it's on the edge of Greece. To me, that's like Schmidt's trying to keep Hydra he's trying to separate himself from the Nazis and from Germany, and basically just set up his own empire because, like you said, he wants to blow up. We're going to later find out. I think maybe we already did find out that Berlin's on his list of cities to destroy, right along with London and New York and all the rest.
Right.
What's also interesting is he has these numbered. Number 1 and 6 are both up in Poland. 4 is that's the one that's in Prague. 3 is in Greece. 2 is where we are. Actually, it doesn't even look like Austria. It actually looks like it's in Italy. So maybe they are on a different one that's not even on this map. And then they have number 5 up in Luxembourg.
Italy was Germany's ally and was basically kind of a puppet state of Germany at this point. So yeah, Italy would be just as likely as any of the rest of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we have a moment that is really one of my favorite images in the film. And maybe it speaks to my love of film noir, but the way that all of the stuff in the corridor outside of Schmidt's experiment, or outside of Zola's experiment room, looks, it's so beautifully lit. Like, we have Steve walking down the hallway and you just see his silhouette with some yellow light behind him. Zola comes running out in his trench coat and his hat, or he's holding his trench coat and he's wearing his hat. And it's just shadows and figures in this darkly lit corridor. And it's just beautiful. I love the way that this whole thing looks. Did it strike either of you to kind of like have kind of this feel for kind of a noirish 40s film?
Oh, absolutely. Especially Zola, because the way his coat falls, the way his belongings are under his arm, and the way his hat is cut in that silhouette is just perfect. Moving from the yellows to the pinks and blues and reds back to the yellows in the foreframe, I think is just a lovely composition. It does lead to the cap choice here. Like, he could absolutely catch Zola if he wanted to, but he stops for some reason. And so I think that whole approach, as he closes the distance, it's all shot perfectly. It gives us that opportunity for the devil's choice. What's going to happen in that room? I think it's fantastic.
I love the way that it plays. But to your point, it does make me wonder, why does Steve stop? Like, is it because Zola doesn't look like a Hydra soldier and he's just like more curious about where he's coming from, as opposed to stopping this figure who looks like essentially a businessman running down the hallway? Because we don't have a moan echo from the room until after Steve has stopped. So The only reason he kind of stops and turns is because then he does hear that moan.
Because you know who you chase if you're Captain America? You chase the guy running away from you, right? Like, I don't think he needs to worry about not knowing who Zola is. Zola sees him and starts to run. And so if I'm Cap, I follow him. So, I don't know. Movie logic.
Zola doesn't look like a bully. He looks like a guy who gets bullied, which is actually true in this movie with how Schmidt treats him. And so I don't know that like Cap takes that all in a moment, but like I don't think Cap looks at Zola and thinks this is the epitome of the German bullies I came here to beat up.
Yeah, he's not my target.
Even when he starts running, he's not doing a Kruger run. He's doing, a very casual, like almost like the run that, you see me running after you, so you run faster sort of run, like just to almost like make Zola, get out of here a little quicker.
If it's even slower than his Sunday on your left run. Like
it's a very slow run.
It's a very casual run.
I mean, he's pretty convinced that like he's going to catch up to him eventually.
Right.
Zola does not have the stamina to outright run him.
That is true. I don't think I have anything else with this minute. The next minute is going to be something in the room here, which should be fun to talk about. So do either of you have any last things for minute 64?
I'm good.
I think that's about it.
All right. Matthew, remind everyone again where they can tune into what you're up to.
TheEthicalPanda.com. I do podcasting. I podcast superhero ethics and also one called the Star Wars Universe Podcast. That one especially I'll talk about because depending on when this is released, Andor will either be in the middle or will have finished, but we're going to do episode by episode coverage of it. We're hopefully going to get a bunch of different guests, talk about all sorts of parts of the Star Wars storyline. I did an episode on Star Trek, and I get the two of them mixed up all the time. So yeah, definitely check that out, theethicalpanda.com. And you can also find me on Twitter and Facebook and TikTok by that same name.
Fantastic. So check that out in the show notes, everybody. We will be back tomorrow for minute 65 to close the week out. Matthew, thank you so much. Appreciate you joining us again back here in Marvel Movie Minute Land.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And Pete, thanks as always.
Tomorrow, Cap finds a cake.
That's what Zola left for him.
Yeah.
Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM. Engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Spread the News by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, consider doing that for this show.